Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
Today we're doing our video game episode. We've got a pretty interesting topic. It's actually one of my favorite video game franchises. A bunch of crazy things went into it. And we've got a very interesting character who created this, and he has also created another great series in God of War. If you don't know who I'm talking about or what I'm talking about by now, then you probably haven't played the game. I'm talking about David Jaffe, but I'm specifically talking about Twisted Metal. I love these. I love this series, and it's fantastic. But before we get into it, let me get into my usual spiel that I got to run down, just so that maybe, just maybe, we'll keep the lights on another week. We are Why Does This Exist? We are a show that is dedicated to the very weirdest in pop culture. That includes video games, strange toys, or just regular products. We also talk about bizarre music artists, sometimes genres. We also discuss TV shows. And just about anything in the world that has been or will be very weird and very strange, whether it's happened or it's in development or it's going to happen at some point. We touch on all these things and more. We've been going for quite a long time. In fact, this is our 50th episode, so that's awesome. We want to thank each and every one of you for keeping this show going for 50 full episodes. We can't wait to see what happens in the next 50. If you want to support us even further than just listening to us, you could do that in a few ways. You can support the show by heading over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. So if you give us as little as $1, you get access to the Discord server where you could just kind of like hang out with us or just send us very silly questions that we can answer on the air. We'll just hang out and we'll give you some clues as to what's coming next, and you'll see which episodes are going to be coming over the next several weeks. So you'll know ahead of time what to tune in for and what to tell your friends and family and whatever you want to do. You can also follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/WDTEpod. Or you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/whydoesthisexistpod. And if you want to let us know, if you want to give us a tip on maybe a question that you want us to answer, if you want to just, pat us on the back, or you want to tell us to go right to hell and screw ourselves, you can do that by letting us know at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com. And we've also got some extra stuff at our podcast episode at our podcast website. That's whydoesthisexistpod.com. We have not only our episodes, we also have articles that we try to update every couple of months. We try to have a new article up every few months. We've actually got a new one this week by our man Tony, who tends to write a lot of the content for us. It's about the band Ween, who, if you don't know them, they've done a couple of things for SpongeBob. They were in the movie. You might know a song called Ocean Man by them. They're a little bizarre. They worship a strange god head thing, demon, called The Boognish. You can, but I'm not going to tell you the whole article. I want you to head on over and read it at whydoesthisexistshow.com. Tony is also going to be doing a follow-up piece because he's actually seen these guys live. So there's a little bit more to come. He'll also be writing a couple of other articles on weird horror movies and stuff like that. So you get a kick out of us. We get a kick out of you. It's really nice. And Tony, you should read his stuff. He's pretty good. And also, I think at some point we'll probably end up doing a Ween episode, and it'd be great to have him on to talk about them. So that way you can put a voice to the words. Mm-hmm. You can also find us and listen to us on a bunch of other places. You can find us on Spreaker, our lovely home. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Pandora, TuneIn, Alexa, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Listen Notes, and Stitcher. And you can also support the channel by heading on over to our YouTube channel. That's Why Does This Exist? With a question mark. Subscribe to the channel, like our stuff, comment on our videos. Please give us feedback so that way we can improve on our work and we can improve on making the show as good as it possibly can. All of your feedback helps. So we thank each and every one of you, and we're very proud that we've gotten to 50 episodes, and we'll do as many as we can. But that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. Let's get on with the goddamn show. Twisted Metal, if you haven't played the game, it's pretty much a PlayStation exclusive. You've also had there. I think you can play the latest one on PC.
No, the old ones run PC.
Oh, the old ones. Okay, my apologies. I've already made an error. My bad.
Yeah, the first two.
Okay. Well, anyway, Twisted Metal is it's not a racing game, but it features cars. It's a vehicular combat, which is a good album or song title.
Yes. It's a vehicular combat battle royale-esque game.
Yeah, so you're running around grabbing like missiles and stuff, and you have like special moves in your like whack job car, and you're blowing everybody up, and you're trying to murder them, and you're also destroying the level because each character has its own unique thing. They're at where there's Twisted Metal itself is a tournament in which free for all, kill every car. Your driver, and it's run by this interesting fellow named Calypso, who is some kind of a mystic, demonic force. I don't really know what he is, but he has some kind of special powers where he can any wish. But of course, you need to be as specific as humanly possible because he will screw with you and he will manipulate your wish. And it usually ends up working against the requester / winner of the tournament. So, so unless you're very specific in your words, then you won't. Then whatever you ask for is going to be a messed up version that will very likely kill whomever asks for it. Many times they end up actually dying. It's sometimes sad. It's usually pretty comical. But Twisted Metal it's just a really fun game. I love just about all of them. The only one that I haven't played is I haven't played the most recent one.
I haven't played any of the newer ones. I've only played up to Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah, that's the one. I've played Head On. Head On was the last one that I played.
Yeah, I haven't played any of that or the reboot one.
Yeah, I never played Twisted Metal 2012, which is the reboot.
No. The original ones, I think Twisted Metal 2 was always my favorite. Twisted Metal 1 was really good too, but I think 2 really kind of expanded on all the good things of Twisted Metal 1.
Yes.
And
2 is actually a lot of is actually a lot of people's favorites.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it's pretty much widely regarded as the best one in the series, Twisted Metal 2. It had the most amount of characters. The levels were actually really all unique and so like Twisted Metal 1 really only takes place in and around LA pretty much. And so the Twisted Metal tournament, as you had said before, is run by that guy Calypso. And basically what he does is like it's almost like if you've seen the movie Cannonball Run, where like, all those cars are like racing to like win this big prize across America, but instead of racing, they're trying to blow the shit out of each other with fucking missiles and machine guns and weapons and stuff. And there's all these crazy characters. The biggest character, like probably the mascot of the series that everybody knows, that's he's on the cover, is of course Sweet Tooth, who is like a killer clown that drives an ice cream truck. And like depending on what incarnation of Sweet Tooth you're playing, he either launches, I believe, like it was like a multicolored missile, or I think in Twisted Metal Black, his ice cream truck actually like transforms into like a clown robot, and attacks for the special. And like you said, every character has their like own unique, specials and finishers. There's a host of weapons that anybody can use. So like you have like seeker missiles and power missiles and napalm and that kind of thing. And that's, anybody can pick those up. And then of course everybody has their special weapon, and everybody's is different. When I was a kid,
that actually came in Twisted Metal 2, were the specials.
Yeah. So Twisted Metal 1 didn't have the specials, so it was just the regular missiles and all that stuff. Then Twisted Metal 2 decided to make their own specials, and the specials are actually really unique. Like each one had their own cool little thing. I used to always play as what is it, Spectre, I think, who is supposed to be almost like when I was a kid. I think he's supposed to be almost like a secret agent or something, and he drove like almost like a Shelby GT sports car. And his special was like these seeker missiles that would like seek anyone on the map. Like it wasn't like, because like the homing missiles, that like the default homing missiles are pretty good, but you had to actually still kind of aim at the person. Like they had to be on your screen. But Spectre's missile would you could just launch it and it would go find somebody basically. And there's a lot of cool different characters. There was like there's a like Warthog who drives like a Humvee, and he's kind of like this again, various incarnations, but he's almost like an undead soldier, I guess. And then there's Axel, who was this dude that gets basically like grafted to these giant wheels. And he's like this like guy that's like friggin' like got like wheels strapped to his arms that he drives around with. So it's like really colorful cast of characters.
Yeah, there's always a few that stick around for just about every game.
Yes,
those Mr. Grimm is another one who, depending on what version you play, he's either like the Grim Reaper incarnate, or he's like a grizzled Vietnam veteran whose mind has just been like turned into, like, he's just basically gone crazy and he's a cannibal.
Yeah.
So it depends on what version you play, but Twisted, I would.
So the original games, the Twisted Metal 1 through 4, kind of had these more like colorful and wacky characters, and then Twisted Metal Black, which was the first installment on the PlayStation 2, was kind of like this more gritty, realistic storyline where like
they took them as far as they could go into like the darkest corners of the earth.
Yeah, all the characters were like, basically every character's story arc starts off with them in an insane asylum, and Calypso coming to basically visit them and be like, hey, I'm going to basically buy your freedom and you're going to participate in this tournament and I'll give you whatever you want, kind of. And it's like, it's really dark, and like, the character backstories are like really like depressing and sad and
very
dark.
dramatic.
Yeah. So that was a big turn for the series because, it always had kind of like a darker like setting. Obviously, it's almost like, like a Mad Max or, a Death Race kind of like feel to it. But it wasn't until like Black that it got super realistic and gritty.
Yeah.
There was always this kind of like wacky tongue in cheek mentality in the first 4 games.
Twisted Metal Black is unique for a number of reasons. I mean, also Calypso looks very, very different than.
Yeah, they completely changed the design of every character, really, Calypso included.
Yes, but no one got a bigger change than Calypso. Like the others, you at least had an idea of who they were for the most.
Yeah,
like Warthog, he still had he still had some sort of like military like thing going on. I think he was a SWAT in that one.
Yeah.
And you had Sweet Tooth, who went from being more of like a crazy, like mischievous evil clown to like being a legit serial killer.
Yeah, like a John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah,
kind of situation.
And then you just had other instances where like Mr. Grimm, like we just said before, he was in the other games he was more or less the Grim Reaper personified as a driver, and in this one he's a Vietnam War veteran who like wears the skull of his dead military buddy who was the first person that he ate because he was trapped because they got captured in Vietnam and they got thrown into a death pit, and like some guy like just gave him a fork and said, well, looks like you're gonna get hungry, and if you want to survive you gotta eat. So it was like stuff, and he just like lost it completely.
Yeah.
But you also get introduced to various other characters throughout the games, but Black is a very interesting one because not only did it take it as far as dark as it could get, it also was a reunion of sorts for the original team. Not everybody was there, but to get to that, we got to kind of go back to the beginning a little bit. But the original team worked single track developed.
Yes.
They developed Twisted Metal 1 and 2.
Yes.
Then like there were creative differences and various other things, and people left around around Twisted Metal 3. The creator David Jaffe was kind of, but not really involved in 3, and the in-house studio that Sony used was 989.
Yes.
And they developed Twisted Metal 3 and 4, and it was a completely new team just doing it. So while they made good games, David Jaffe has said this too, they've made good, like Twisted Metal 3 and 4 were good games, but he doesn't believe that they were good Twisted Metal games because it got much more campy and lighthearted. The endings and just, I wouldn't say so much the world or anything, but you could see in the character models, and you can also see in the just in the endings themselves. It takes a much more lighthearted turn where ends up where Black ends up getting parts of the old band back together. Not everybody, but they end up getting a bulk of the band back together, and they really just take this in the direction that it needed to go. So a lot of people feel that Black is the direct sequel to Twisted Metal 2.
Yeah.
So it's very cool.
Yeah.
The studio was called Incognito Entertainment that they formed.
Yes.
And they had owned it was good. It was good. And they also went on to do Head On, which was with PlayStation Portable, and Head On Extra Twisted Edition, which was also for the PS2. And Head On. The interesting thing about Head On, especially Extra Twisted Edition, which again, to go back to the start, David Jaffe had gotten into video. He had kind of fallen into video games. He had actually moved to California. He went to school at University of Southern California to become a film director. He always wanted to be a director, and he always wanted to make movies. And after years of trying to get studios to buy his scripts and get his screenplays and getting Hollywood to give him a shot, after a while you get hungry, and it's like, all right, I got to get a real job until this happens. And and there was an opening at Sony for a game tester. So he got that job, and he was just testing games for a while and whatever. And eventually, because Sony was much smaller and video games at the time were starting to become a lot more story driven, rather than just a mindless platformer where it's like, okay, do this thing, or a racing game, just okay, pick a car and then drive. It wasn't like video games were evolving to a more storyline based thing. And he had and the thing that interested him was how Sony America was really more or less like just kind of stuck in like the standard video game ways of just, like we just said, platformer, okay, jump. We're not developing a story or fleshing out a character. Just make the game, crank it out, and then just sell it. And if it's a hit, it's a hit. And let marketing worry about that part. And the Japan arm was much more focused on storytelling and character development and things. So he wanted to try to start bringing that onto like the American side, which of course eventually happened. But him and whoever his partners were or whatever, they ended up actually pissing off, they ended up wanting to get their visions out like creatively. And they ended up pissing off just about every team that they had worked with, because they were trying to get their ideas across, and they were getting pushback. And there was a team in Utah that was doing that was actually working with military. They were like designing like military training things with like 3D software and stuff. So they had the technology to do what he wanted to do. And they had been doing it for years, so they were like, all right, well, you pissed everybody else off, so these people could probably like have the resources to do what you want, but if you piss them off too, then you're done. So he was like, okay, fine. And they got the idea for Twisted Metal when they had gone back to California and they were sitting in traffic. And if you've ever been to California, especially in the Los Angeles area, traffic is like 3/4 of your day, basically. Like, there's nothing like traffic there. It's pretty damn terrible.
Yeah.
It's also very hot because it's sunny California, so it's not fun. If you've ever seen the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you pretty much want to do what he does at the end of the movie when he really loses it. But he's sitting in traffic with his buddy, and they both come up and they're both just like, God, don't you just want to like blow up every single car that's just sitting there? And it just came, and it just came there, and they were like, oh my God, that's the video game. Like, we have the idea, and we could, and that's what we need the Utah team to do. So this was also a time where like Sony's gaming division was so small, where if they had openings to do extra games, you just sat and like they just put everybody from every team in a meeting, and they were like, okay, pitch us an idea. Like, just give the marketing guy an idea, and you waited your turn, you said your idea, and the marketing guy either shot it down or said, okay, we're making the game, you're greenlit, which ended up happening with him. It wasn't originally called Twisted Metal. I forget what it was called, but it was a really lame name. It was something along the lines of like car destruction or something stupid.
Oh yeah.
That. But it was.
I'm sure that was just a working title. a lot of games come up with these working titles that are really stupid and boring, and then they finally come up with something that's like way better, like closer to release time.
At the time, I'm sure, but like at the time, I'm sure he was like, okay, like this is car destruction, and then eventually it did get a name. I don't know how he actually came up with the name Twisted Metal, but eventually it ended up working.
Well, yeah,
and that's what they.
It's a pretty catchy, simple name. So, and really kind of explains what the game is without like revealing too much. So it works.
Yeah. So he ended up making it, but there were two titles that Single Track was working on, and one was Twisted Metal, and the other one was Warhawk. This was Single Track's first two games, and Sony was. And Warhawk was like was like an air fighter game, kind of like it was a
vertical takeoff and landing kind of vehicle, like futuristic air a combat game.
Right. So you were doing something similar in the air, but and Sony was over the moon about Warhawk, and they weren't really like, nobody mentioned Twisted Metal, so like David Jaffe thought that his career was over because he was like, all right, well, Sony doesn't, they won't shut up about Warhawk, and nobody wants to say anything about Twisted Metal, so he figured the writing was on the wall. Warhawk will be a hit, and then Twisted Metal will be a flop, and then he'll have to do something else for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that Twisted Metal was like ended up being a big seller. I mean, it also didn't help that the playtesters that they had, that were reviewing it, were like very harsh on Twisted Metal. But he now, in hindsight, has said that it's probably his fault because he was a big fan of Mortal Kombat, and he was telling people that Twisted Metal or car destruction, whatever the hell he was calling it, he was telling them that Twisted Metal is like Mortal Kombat for cars. So the people that they were giving it to test it and review it, they were telling them that, and the people that they were picking were fighting game fans.
Oh yeah.
So like they were targeting the wrong audience. So they were, of course, getting unfavorable criticism from them. And he really thought that it was going to just be a disaster, and he just figured his days were numbered. He let me get my resume ready and everything. And Twisted Metal ends up being a huge freaking hit.
Yeah.
Now,
they were
PlayStation
greatest hits. They were,
yes.
I think the first 4 games were all PS greatest hits.
Yeah. I mean, collectively, it's sold many millions of copies, the whole series. Yeah. I have it. I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia for this, and as of 2000, the series had 5 million at the time. So I can only imagine what the total sales numbers would be now. It's got to be in at least double or triple that.
Yeah. Well, it's that's the first 4 games alone sell 5 million copies. So
yeah. So the first game was really just like, let me test this. Like his analogy was, you're flying the plane while you're building it, so you really don't know what you're doing, but you at least have you know that you have like your basic fundamentals of like what you want in the game, and you try to just do that. And then the sequel is like you're refining everything from the first game. And that's why people like Twisted Metal 2 so much more, and also because
Twisted Metal was more of like a demo or a beta version of Twisted Metal 2, almost.
Right. And the selling point of Twisted Metal 2 was really you could destroy the entire world.
Yeah. Because Twisted Metal 2 obviously goes, I said before, Twisted Metal 1 takes place only in LA, whereas Twisted Metal 2 takes place in a bunch of different locations around the entire world, including New York City, Antarctica, Hong Kong. So it's got and the levels are really unique and different. Each level is unique and different. And I think one thing that they kind of introduced in this, which really hadn't been done it wasn't done as much in car games, more in first-person shooters, which was like destructible environments that like let you get into secret areas, which Twisted Metal 2 had a lot of, like where you could blow up a wall and go through a teleporter, and you're all of a sudden in this like different part of the map where it's harder to get to, and a lot of the times there was like better items, like you would get like, you could get like refills of your special and stuff in those areas, or health pickups.
Right.
And that was,
I think, the most iconic one of that everybody like, that it makes everybody, for a lot of people, it's their favorite level in the entire series, is Paris, because you can blow up the Eiffel Tower.
Yes. And this is the cool thing, is that when you blow up the Eiffel Tower, you could pretty much like play King of the Hill up there, basically, because that was like, you had like a lot of good weapon spawns and health spawns, and like there's only one way to get up there, through the teleporter. So it was like, if you're really having like a tough time, the best thing to do on the Paris level is just go up to that, up to the friggin' Eiffel Tower, and just like chill up there and wait for like the enemies to come to you.
Right.
There was also a lot of little Easter eggs that you could do. Obviously, like blowing up the Eiffel Tower. In the New York City level, you could like shoot missiles at the Statue of Liberty and like blow her dress off, and she's got like a bikini on under it.
Yeah,
it's just like stupid like little stuff like that. And like you can't, like, it's funny because the Statue of Liberty, like, you wouldn't know this because it's like in the background. Obviously, like it's part of the skybox because you're like on these like building tops, these rooftops of these buildings. So, like, you really wouldn't know this unless you, like, actually drove to the edge of the roof and started shooting at the Statue of Liberty. And it's just, like, this, like, secret little Easter egg that they put in. And there was, like, a lot of little things like that in Twisted Metal 2. And, they kind of continued that with Twisted Metal 3 and 4, but it wasn't as... I don't think it was as, like, obvious like that, or there wasn't as many little Easter eggs like that. And part of the reason, like, Twisted Metal 3, and there's definitely like a stark contrast between 2 and 3, like, because as you had said before, basically the entire team left, and Sony handed over development to their own in-house studio, which is 989. And basically because of like that, Single Track actually owned the proprietary rights to the engine that Twisted Metal was on. So when 989 took over development, they had to build their own engine from scratch.
Right.
And so it's a really different feeling game. Like where Twisted Metal 2 used a lot of sprites. It's like obviously your car and a lot of the the buildings and the environment were 3D, but like like the weapons and like there's like people and stuff like that walk around, like they're all sprites. Whereas in Twisted Metal 3 and 4, they kind of made it more like a 3D modeled. Everything was more 3D modeled. And the driving physics feel a lot different between the two, the Twisted Metal 2 and Twisted Metal 3. It just, like, the cars feel a little bit... It's hard to explain, almost like...
they feel lighter.
Yeah, like a little bit floatier maybe, and not as... Twisted Metal 2, the cars kind of felt more like you were like stuck behind them and it was more stiff, whereas in Twisted Metal 3 they were a little bit looser in the steering controls, I think.
Yeah, you felt like you were going faster.
Yeah.
Twisted Metal 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Which actually I liked 4 quite a bit.
Yeah, I liked 3 of the two. 4 was okay too, but I thought 3 was a little bit better.
I liked 4 because, I liked 4 because I felt that the gameplay was a lot smoother. But I also, and I liked some of the levels a lot. I liked how at the end I like how after you fought how in just about every level after you blew up all your opponents, there was a boss that you had to go after too. I thought that
yes,
like you'd have to fight Minion.
Yeah, well, Minion is another staple of the series. Minion's pretty much in every Twisted Metal in various
I like that they added that additional challenge where you had to go after a boss after like every level. I mean, the storyline is different in that one too, because in all of them, it's Calypso who's hosting the tournament, but in Twisted Metal 4, Sweet Tooth actually like takes over, and Calypso is a driver.
Mm-hmm.
which he's sometimes a driver in the other games, but in this one, like, it's more, the story is, like, more or less about him.
Yeah. Well, I think he was more of, like, a bonus character in the other games, and this is kind of like he was actually, like, playable from the start in Twisted Metal 4.
And in Twisted Metal 4, you also, like, Rob Zombie's also in the game, which I think is neat.
Yeah, Rob Zombie is a playable character, and he drives Dragula, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's actually... and now, of all things, he's directing the Munsters movie that's supposed to come this year. I honestly think that... I hope that it's good. I think visually it's going to look great.
I've seen some of the actors, and they look very close to the original. So, I think he'll do it justice because he grew up watching it and he wants to do it justice.
Yeah,
you know, he
for
was a
God's
huge
sake,
fan
Dragula's about the car from.
Yeah, it's literally about the Munsters car.
Yeah, so it's. I think he'll do a pretty good job. If he throws in too many like weird Rob Zombie things, then maybe not. But like, I think he has enough respect for the movie, and if they give him enough creative freedom, I think he'll do a pretty good job with it.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to watch it. Although I will say with Rob Zombie movies, it's kind of 50-50.
I just hope it's not like rated R. You know, like I'm okay with it if it's like rated PG-13, if it's a little bit, you know.
That's
but like
what I
if
mean by the Rob Zombie
making it too extreme is like, come on, like, you know, because it was a family show when it came out, you know.
Yeah, I can't see it being anything more than PG-13 because if it's rated R, I think it'll just be too much and it won't really make any sense. Especially, it also doesn't make any sense if you want it to be. If you want to keep it as like a family show or you're banking on nostalgia, then you should probably keep it at PG-13.
Is it going to be a show or is it a movie?
No, it's a movie.
Okay, they are I wasn't sure if he was making it into a show or a movie. I mean, the cast looks great. Like they released a picture of Herman, Lily, and Grandpa Munster, and they look great. Like they look just like the original cast. So, and the house looks just like the original house. So, I'm like hopeful for it. I think it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too.
I used to love the Munsters when I was a kid. Like when I was growing up, I watched the Munsters all the time, like reruns. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I love that show too. It still cracks me up.
Yeah,
like it was a very funny show, and you know Fred Gwynn he was good in just everything he did, and he really steals the show in My Cousin Vinny as the judge.
Of course, yeah.
And but like funny story. So Grandpa Munster back in the 80s, and I want to say from like the late 70s to the early 90s, or I don't know, I'm not sure, but he had a restaurant in the in the East Village in Manhattan.
Really?
Yeah, he had a restaurant called Grandpa's, and he would sit there. In a director's chair, and he would, that was his shtick. You could meet him, and when you could meet him, and you could say hello and everything. And he was mostly very good to his fans, but he was very nasty to the staff.
Really?
Yes, he's infamous. He was infamously nasty to his staff. Like you'd hear him, you'd see him like berating them, like, and then go back to his director's chair and like entertain everybody, and then like. It was just so bizarre, but my parents said that like the food was just okay. Like it wasn't like the food, like some of the food was good. Like the pasta dishes were like pretty decent, but like you didn't really want to get the specials over there, because you'd overpay for them and it'd just be mediocre. And like, but it was a good novelty, but. Apparently, he was a nasty bastard to his staff, and like
that's too bad.
Care. So that's just an interesting thing about Grandpa Munster.
Yeah,
but I think the movie will be good. But anyway,
yeah.
So in Twisted Metal 4, Calypso ends up getting booted by Sweet Tooth, and he has to he has to take the tournament back. So it's. And in his ending, which a lot of them are very cheesy, especially in 3. 3 is especially like cringe.
Yeah.
Some of them. 4 is pretty rough too, compared to the other ones where it's more or less just like the be careful what you wish for thing.
Yeah.
but when Calypso ends up winning, Sweet Tooth doesn't want to give it to him.
Yeah,
like he's just like, no, you're not. Like, I'm not giving you your tournament back. And he's like, well, you have to do it. And like, he doesn't want to do it, but they tussle over this power ring, and it's just weird because in 3 and 4, I believe, Calypso has a ring that, like, it's sort of implied that the ring is what gives him his power. So grant all the wishes. Where in the other games he doesn't have a ring and he just can do it. Like in 2, like lightning shoots out of his fingertips, and like in Black he really just Black is also interesting because in the other games Calypso, when they win, they tell him what their wish is.
Yes.
Whereas in Twisted Metal Black, he already knows what they want, and he just says, "Yeah, I can give you what you want, but you gotta be a driver in my tournament, and you gotta win." So that's
and Black is a little bit different too because it's more of a reboot of the series rather than like a direct sequel to Twisted Metal 4.
Yeah,
they kind of just went in a different direction with it, which it was good. Like I really liked Black a lot, and Black was actually interesting. It was the first game I ever got for PlayStation 2 when I first got my PlayStation 2 back when it came out.
I think it was one of my first games too. Actually, didn't it come with PS2?
Yeah, I think it might have been one of the launch titles.
I think there was a package where it came with it.
Yeah, and I remember because I obviously had played all the Twisted Metal games before that. Like, it was one of my favorite series growing up. And when Black came out, I was like blown away by how much different, how much darker it was, and especially like I loved how you boot it up and it starts like the beginning trailer, and it starts playing the Painted Black from Rolling Stones, and it just worked so well. It was so good.
That song actually kind of scared me on that credits.
Yeah,
first time that I ever heard the Rolling Stones.
Really?
Yeah, Twisted Metal introduced me to a lot of music. Like that game.
Well, Rob Zombie, of course. We forgot to mention Rob Zombie was in Twisted Metal 4.
No,
but the reason why he was in Twisted Metal, no, I know we said that. But what I was saying, the reason why he was in Twisted Metal 4 is because he did the music for both 3 and 4, I believe. They used his music, so they basically were like, hey, do you want to also be in the game because you did the music? But Twisted Metal 3 had a number of tracks from Hellbilly Deluxe. On it, Dragula. I'm pretty sure "Meet the Creeper" was like the intro music.
Yeah, and that was my favorite song for a while. It also had
Super Beast, I think. Yeah.
And it also had some Power Man 5000 in there too, because the guy Spicer is his little brother.
Yeah.
Actually, I actually spoke to him a few years ago. We when I was writing for a website, actually.
That's cool.
An interview with him. Yeah, he was a very nice guy, actually.
Power Man 5000 actually does a fairly good, surprisingly good cover of Space Odyssey by David Bowie.
Huh. I gotta check it out.
Yeah, it's actually really good.
I remember asking him about the Dudley Boys theme song because they had done the song "Get Up" for the Dudley Boys in WWF, and I was like, "What was that like? Like, how'd you find out about it?" He's like, "Somebody told us." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Yeah, the label just." He's like, "That was something negotiated with the label and licensing, so we actually didn't even know until someone called us and said, "Oh, hey, your theme that song, one of your songs is like the theme song for these wrestlers who put people through tables." And he was like, "Oh, well, that's kind of cool."
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. It's like an interesting thing about the music business for people who aren't in it. That this happens all the time.
Well, when Worlds Collide is they're probably their most famous song, and that's been in so many different
that's
things.
In Twisted Metal 3. That was in Twisted Metal 3 for sure.
It was in, I think, one of the SmackDown versus Raw games. It was in Little Nicky, the movie Little Nicky. I'm pretty sure was in it. So that song's been in so many things.
Yeah, but the other thing that I was getting at was we've said this on the CDs episode, but Twisted Metal you could at least 3 and 4. I don't know about the others. but you can if you put the game in your CD player, it would play the soundtrack. So it was really cool. So those games got me into quite a bit of music that I listened to throughout my middle school and high school. So Twisted Metal was very much a gateway music thing for me. So that holds a special place in my heart for quite a few reasons. This franchise.
Yeah,
Black. Black is my absolute favorite, just because of how dark and dreary it is. I love how they really flesh out the characters, not only through the cutscenes, but the loading screens are unique to the character, and it just has like a little line about their backstory.
Yeah,
which is actually very cool. I loved that. The interesting thing is one of the characters, Minion, that you unlocked later on, and that I think after you've beaten it with everybody, you unlock Minion.
Yeah, because he was always the most strong boss that you fight, because he's in basically like a fucking tank. It was like an APC or something.
Yeah, his is all all of his quotes are numerical. He doesn't have any cutscenes or anything, and he and if you decipher it, it's all very interesting, and that leads into this theory that I saw the other day that actually kind of makes sense about Calypso, Sweet Tooth, and Minion in that they are the same person.
That's interesting.
So in Sweet Tooth's now he's more iconic and more well known. Matt only has one eye. So in the game has only one eye that he can really see out of. The other one is very scarred and it's just kind of black, which I guess maybe that's where he's able to channel his powers in the game. It's kind of implied. It's not implied, but it's it would make sense if you think about it, that's where he would get the powers from anyway. Also, Calypso's appearance is very different in this one. In the other games, he has very long hair.
Yes.
This one, he's totally bald.
Yeah.
But Calypso, so the theory is that Sweet Tooth, Calypso, and Minion, they're each the ego, the superego, and the id of the same person, Marcus Kane. Which in Twisted Metal 2012, it only really revolves around four characters from the storyline from the Twisted Metal Black game, and their movies are their cutscenes and storylines are actually full motion video, so they're they're actual full on movies, which that connects back to the first game, which I'll explain in a minute. But in that one, you get a little bit more into their backstory. In Sweet Tooth, you see that he was a family man. He had his own ice cream truck business and whatever, and he was just a big guy with an ice cream truck, and he was a friendly ice cream man. And there was a piece of him that he was trying to keep dormant because it was Sweet Tooth, of course, who was the more primal animalistic side. I want to say that that's the id, but I don't remember which is which. I think the ego is the one that you see. The super ego is I think the super ego is I think the super ego is a more kind of who you want to be, and the id is who you really are in your most basic primal form underneath. And
yes, the id is the uncoordinated instinctual desires. The superego plays the critical and moralizing role, and the ego is organized, realistic agent that mediates between the instinctual desires of the id and the critical superego.
There you go.
There's according to Wikipedia. So there you go.
All right. Well, hopefully that's right. Anyway, so the theory is that Sweet Tooth is the id, and he ends up taking over, and Minion is Marcus Kane as the
The superego.
Is the superego, and Calypso is the ego.
That makes sense. I can see that.
Yeah, and the case for it is like the case for it is Minion in his like in the binary code that throughout the loading screens, like there's something along the lines of I can only speak in code. And we also know that Sweet Tooth is an insomniac, so he can't sleep, and that's more or less him trying to like further suppress and destroy the superego, of Marcus Kane or Minion, if you will, and we don't really know what Minion looks like because he has like a bull mask on in Twisted Metal Black, but in the code he's Marcus. He's like, I'm Marcus Kane. I can only speak in code because he can't, so that way Sweet Tooth doesn't find me. But this world is his. This world is not as. This is not the real world. This is just how he sees it. Which also makes sense because they're all in the insane asylum, and he's also like in the cutscenes, it's like this is his tournament. And this is just a manifestation of what it is, which again continues to make sense. When he meets Calypso, his story in the game is that he's like, the reason that his head is on fire is that it's a curse that the preacher, who's a sick puppy in his own right, puts a curse on him when he's going to the electric chair, and which of course he doesn't die, and the curse sets his head on fire, and he feels this burning sensation. I'm not sure if it's like in the game it's literal, but this could be, from his perspective of what he's feeling and not necessarily what is actually happening to him. And in the game, when Sweet Tooth wins, he confronts Calypso and he says, I want this curse. I want to be rid of this curse. I don't want and Calypso says, okay, fine. And he gives him a vial and he says, if you drink this, it'll go away, but you have to promise to never go back to your killing ways. Because the minute that you kill someone, you're gonna the curse. It'll wear the antidote will wear off, and then you're gonna be, and the curse is gonna come back. And in response, Sweet Tooth kills Calypso. So, and which again would also make sense of Calypso becoming the dominant power of those three personalities, and the id finally breaks free and he continues his rampage. Yeah, because he very much enjoys killing.
And it kind of ties back into Twisted Metal 4.
They're constantly back and forth.
Yeah, it kind of ties back into Twisted Metal 4 too, with the conflict between Calypso and Sweet Tooth. Because Sweet Tooth takes over the tournament and makes Calypso participate in it.
Right. So
that's an interesting theory.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like a Tyler Durden kind of situation. You could say.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
I would say so. The Sweet Tooth also has a couple of interesting things as part of the whole Twisted Metal Black thing. But just in the game and throughout the whole franchise himself, we do know that his real name is Marcus Kane. His biological name was Marcus Kane. And in Twisted Metal Black, he takes on the name Needles Kane.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And there's various other Kanes in the game. Throughout the various games, there's other Kanes. So there's a taxi cab one. I think his name is the name of the car is Yellow Jacket, and in Twisted Metal Black, the driver of Yellow Jacket is his father, who he murders, and he's wired by he's being controlled by his much younger brother, and the younger brother wants the father to come back, and again to tie into this, when he meets Calypso, he tells him, "I want my father back." And Calypso smashes the remote control, and he just leaves him to die. And he's like, then he basically tells him, "You like, I can bring people back from the dead, but I'm not bringing back this one." And which seems like it's out of character for Calypso, because he's like, you need to learn, like, you need to grow stronger. But he also tells him, in that he takes him under his wing, and he says, "I need you to run the tournament for when I pass on, or for when I move on. The perfect replacement would have been your brother, but you killed him." And that's when the kid realizes that Sweet Tooth is his brother. So if Calypso is also his brother, it would make sense why the kid wouldn't recognize either of them, because Calypso has been disfigured and he's lost his hair. We don't really know what he looked like, when they were growing up, but he's been disfigured. So of course he wouldn't really recognize him, and the father had taken him away from him, so he hasn't seen him in quite some time. So that also connects, and then him realizing that he's Sweet Tooth's brother, that would be another thing that ties directly into the whole thing. So there's interesting things. And then in Twisted Metal Black, in Twisted Metal 2012, Sweet Tooth is trying to go after his daughter. Like because he goes back to the first murder that he commits as Sweet Tooth, and he goes after his family. So he murders each and every person, except for, which in another ending we find out that the daughter escaped, but then and Sweet Tooth is trying to go after his daughter. But then during the course of that ending, we find out that Sweet Tooth left one of his sons alive too. So he had two sons and a daughter and his wife, and he murdered one son and the other, and he thought that he had murdered the other one, or it's implied that he had murdered the other one, and his daughter stabs him in the eye with a pair of scissors, and she gets away. But then it's later revealed, because Sweet Tooth dies somehow. He dies, and it's later revealed that Sweet Tooth's daughter, in one of the endings, and I believe in Head On, the daughter ends up taking over. And in Twisted Metal 2012, the son it actually turns out that he was left alive, and the son continues his work. But it's so that's interesting there. And there's also another Kane, I think, in Twisted Metal 2, I think there's another Kane in there. But anyway, there's the Sweet Tooth connection is very interesting, and I actually really like the theory, and I think there's enough evidence in the games that support it. But I can't prove it. David Jaffe hasn't explicitly said that, but I could definitely see that being realistic. One interesting thing about David Jaffe is there in Twisted Metal Head On Extra Twisted for the PS2. There's a couple of very interesting Easter eggs in there, and there's a lot of really interesting bonus things. One of which, there's a documentary called Dark Past, which is about a half hour, and it's just it's the main developers and designers of the game talking about the original Twisted Metal games and how they came to be and everything, from up until its inception to Head On, or really Black, actually. And David Jaffe mentions that it's interesting that the two he created two iconic characters, which is Sweet Tooth and Kratos from God of War, and both of them are both very primal, very animalistic, just very barbaric characters. like the epitome of just like toxic masculinity, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he says he mentions that, and he's like, I created these two characters that are just about like the most brutish form of man that you could get, and I'm nothing like that in real life. Like I'm like you wouldn't like you would be, if you saw me up the street, you wouldn't think anything threatening of me at all. Or if you see the two of them, it's bad news. But like in therapy sessions, his therapist has noticed that he did that, and his therapist had connected the dots, and his therapist has basically told him that it's possible that those two are variations of his id.
Uh-huh.
That's how he was able to, and that's like how he was able to really express that nature and just unleash that, and just unleash the id. So I think
that's interesting.
It is interesting. So I just wanted to put that out there. But the other really cool things that you get are there was a sequel to Twisted Metal Black that just really there were a couple of sequels actually that just never happened.
Yeah.
And they tried for a few, like they the main direct sequel to Twisted Metal Black was supposed to be called Twisted Metal Harbor City.
Uh-huh.
It was never fully announced officially, and it was just scrapped, but they had worked on it, and there was just a dispute, and like much of the team just said screw this and they left.
Yeah.
But Twisted Metal Harbor City was it was supposed to be there was supposed to be like more like a more open world game, and the levels were going to be interconnected with one another, so we were going to feel like
that's cool.
One complete world rather than just standalone levels.
Yeah.
And in Twisted Metal Head On Extra Twisted Edition, they did get through to 4 levels. So the 4 levels are included as a bonus game called Twisted Metal Lost. So you're able to play through what they had. There's not really any like storylines or anything. It's just you pick the car and you just do standard Twisted Metal with it, which I think is kind of cool. But the other one that's very interesting is in the original Twisted Metal. Now, like I said, David Jaffe went to film school, or he at least went to college with the desire of being a filmmaker. So he took his hand in directing cutscenes for the first Twisted Metal. He'd created the endings and everything, which would have introduced you to the world, really. And you would have seen Calypso, which he also has a very different look in this one, where it's he has a burnt face, and he just has he looks like Carrot Top with the burned face, essentially. So you figure that one out, and there's just really it's he shot these live action sequences of full motion video for the original Twisted Metal endings, and he did a bunch of them on a lower budget and everything, and they're very cheesy and they're very campy, and but there was a charm to it. Like in the testing groups that they did with that, the people they didn't care that it was campy and stupid. They actually loved those cutscenes because they were connecting with the characters.
Yeah.
Now the cutscenes are very bad and very cheesy, so you'll laugh pretty hard when you watch some of them. But they ended up getting cut because this is going to sound silly, but the team, most of the team being in Salt Lake City, Utah, a lot of them were very religious. Some were, I don't know if they were Mormons. I don't know if they're,
probably if they're in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, it's implied that they could have been Mormons, but in interviews he just mentions very religious. So he's vague there, but they're either very Christian or they're Mormons or they're very into or they're like a little bit more Orthodox Jewish or or Muslim or whatever they are, whatever they believe in. They were very religious, and in the cutscenes, it's an underbelly thing. So Calypso is surrounded by bodyguards and scantily clad women in bikinis. So you would think that a super religious person would have a problem with with just a violent video game in general and just cars blowing each other up and you murdering other drivers and this seedy underbelly and crime and all these other things. But no, the big problem was the bikinis. We can't show boobs or anything. You can't, no sex in my game. So they asked for the team threatened to walk and have their names pulled from the game, and they refused to do whatever they needed to do to complete the game. And they basically just went on a religion strike, for them to get rid of the boobs. And David Jaffe was I didn't really want to do this because I was mad because this was my crack at this is my crack at being a film director, which now that I look back at it, it's cringy and stupid, but
yeah.
But they ended up cutting all of the cutscenes. But in Twisted Metal Extra Twisted, in Twisted Metal Head On Extra Twisted Edition, they have they've unearthed those cutscenes for you to watch as another really fun bonus, and it's really bad. The quality is pretty awful. It's it seems like they recovered it from a very old tape recorder that was in a vault somewhere.
Yeah,
there's some skipping and it's extra grainy and everything, and it's they restored it to the best of their abilities.
Yeah,
it's just really it's really badly the audio is pretty terrible too. Calypso has a very distorted voice. And
yeah.
None of it makes it the writing is very incoherent and it doesn't make any sense. But eventually they get better. To the cutscenes or the finales really, they're all in this really cool comic book style where it's more like an animated comic book or a living comic book. So you get these really beautiful strings of artworks, and they throw on the occasional visual effect on there, the lightning bolts coming out of Calypso's hands, and you'll see some other things. It's really cool. Twisted Metal for 3 through Black, it's all computer graphics, and then Head On, it returns to the comic style of 2, and then in Twisted Metal 2012, we then get it gets the full on live action cutscenes, which is cool, and I like how they tie into each other in that also. So you get a real movie when when the whole thing is completed, and it's about an hour to all the twisted of between Twisted Metal and 2012 and Twisted Metal Black. The weirdest one is Twisted Metal Small Brawl, which was originally going to be called Twisted Metal Kids, but they thought that the title was stupid. So it's in a sandbox, which is it's referenced in a couple of the endings in Twisted Metal 4, where it's it's the same drivers and everything, but they're all younger children. Calypso is a teenager. Basically picture Sid from Toy Story. Demolition Derby, and that's pretty much Twisted Metal Small Brawl.
They're all RC cars or whatever, right?
Yeah, they're all RC cars.
Yeah,
and that one. Yeah, the wishes get absurd, but it's supposed to be. It's pretty funny. But the thing about Calypso is you have to be very specific with your words, and they tend to get the happier endings if they're very specific. Where with most of the other ones, Calypso will he'll twist their words and he'll manipulate it to become like something terrible. Like in one of the games, somebody wishes for all the money. Right, he wishes for money, and he wishes for like all the cash. I want all of it. I want all the money, and the money rains from the sky, and it buries him.
Yeah,
that's
it's like a monkey's paw situation.
Yeah, except in the difference is the monkey's paw, regardless of how specific you are, it always gives you a twisted version of what you asked for.
Well, yeah.
Whereas Calypso, you have to be as specific as possible where there's no way for him to screw it up.
Yeah.
And then he'll give it to you. But the problem is, in a lot of those situations, when he does give it to you, like there's a lot of law enforcement officials that specifically ask for him, or they want to take him down, or they want to take him to jail or whatever. And he gets out of it, or he usually by killing them in some fashion. The saddest one is in Twisted Metal Black is John Doe, where he he has all of these like gang tattoos, and he doesn't really know what they mean or anything like that because he's lost his memory, so he wants to know who he is. He does this whole thing, and he remembers that, and he remembers in one of the cutscenes that he was involved in a gang, and they were planning on blowing up a lab where they were testing, where they were just testing viruses and vaccines and things like that, and like a lot of biochemicals, and they're gonna blow it up, and they were gonna unleash Armageddon on the world and everything.
Yeah,
oh no, I don't like who I'm becoming. And he wins the tournament. He meets Sweet Tooth, and he says, "I just want to remember who I am." And he's like, "Okay." And it turns out that the guy was a federal FBI agent who was working on was working undercover for 2 years in the gang unit to bust these guys.
Yeah.
And he had a family and everything, and he remembers that he has a family, and at the same time, he remembers that Calypso was that he's an FBI agent. And Calypso is number 2 on the FBI's most wanted list, which if he's that devious, you got to wonder who's number 1, but it's probably Sweet Tooth.
Yeah, maybe.
I would assume that it's Sweet Tooth, which
I guess it would have to be, right? Because who could be worse than Calypso in the Twisted Metal universe?
Exactly. So if they are one and the same, you end up getting a double whammy for that one.
Yeah.
And the minute that he realizes who he is and who Sweet Tooth is and what his job is and what he needs to do right now, Sweet Tooth just murders him.
Yeah.
So it's very sad in a lot of these situations, but there's some where they are very
well. Yeah, I mean, Twisted Metal Black was particularly dark, like we said before. So that's just how it was. I think they did a really good job at set writing and storytelling for that for Twisted Metal Black.
They really did. They did a great job of world development and fleshing out the characters and that. And that's one of the things that I love. But one of the characters in Twisted Metal 2 who gets what they want is Axel, which he wants to confront his father. So he just says I want to finally confront my father. So he back to the farm or whatever, because it turns out that his father imprisoned him in his contraption.
Yeah.
He meets with his father for the first time in 30 years, and he says, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm a grown man, and I've learned my lesson, and I'm ready to move on with my life. And his father's like, no, you haven't. You never learned anything. You're always going to be a bad seed. So he breaks, and so I'm never gonna let you go. And he breaks off his own arms to get out of the contraption, and I think he kills his father so that he can be free of him. And it's also, it's a dark ending, of course, but he gets exactly what he wanted, and his somewhat happier ending. We don't really know what happens to him after that, but you got to assume that whatever it is, it's better than what he was confined to for 30-something years. Also, I'm not really sure how, but he's, like, jacked.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because he's, like, stuck driving all the time, so, like, in his, like, fucking machine, so, it's, like, how does he work out?
yeah, I don't know
Maybe,
how
Maybe, like, just, like, being stretched out, like, makes him, like, fucking muscular or something like that.
I guess, because, like, he's got to be as skinny as can be, but, like, I can't see him being that strong, because, like, unless he, like, gets an electrical charge from the car, I don't really know. I mean, it's a made-up...
How does he eat?
That's what I was thinking.
Like, help him, like, that, like, he has an assistant, he goes to, like, the McDonald's drive-thru and orders food, and then the assistant feeds him.
I guess... Or, I mean, how does he go to the bathroom? Because he's wearing jeans. He's not naked. So, like, how does he go to the bathroom?
Maybe he's got, like, one of those things that the astronauts have that, like, he just pees in his, like, suit and it gets, like, fucking thrown out the back or some shit.
All the time?
I guess.
I mean,
he's stuck in there.
He's been in there for 30 years, so we obviously know that he's figured out some way to sustain himself.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, but man, it's the same pair of jeans for 30 years. I mean, he's kept it pretty clean.
Maybe he just goes through the car wash.
I mean, I guess. Like, where else could he? Who else could fit him?
Yeah, pretty much that.
I mean, also he's flying around in the Twisted Metal tournaments, so like maybe that.
Yeah, he's got like bigger things to worry about than his fucking jeans. Like, you know.
Yeah, and he's also the most obvious target because he's not protected by anything except the wheels.
Yeah.
So he's got quite a lot of issues going on.
Yeah.
This poor guy. So I don't really know how he functions, but dude, maybe that's how he gets jacked, because he's taking all of these impacts.
I guess.
And it just builds his muscle.
He's like immune to bullets because he fucking got shot so many times.
Probably.
Blown up.
Probably. What an interesting character design.
Yeah.
But he's more beloved characters.
Before we end, I wanted to say that I think it's time for a new Twisted Metal game, because I've been saying this for a long time, because Battle Royale games right now are like the big, like, the big thing that's going on in the video game world. And I think so, like, right now is, like, they got to strike while the iron's hot, because I think it would really, like, do well if they made, like, a giant open world Battle Royale Twisted Metal, where you could drive around and it was, like, I don't know if it was, like, massively multiplayer, but, like, like, maybe, like, a bunch, like, 30 or 40 cars in the game world at once, maybe. And, I just make something like that and, bring back all the old characters, maybe bring some new characters on, and make more customization options, like maybe able like customize your car and your different weapons and stuff like that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that part. Well, actually, first of all, one of the other things that like made Twisted Metal 2 a big hit, I'm sorry that we're bouncing around a bit, was the multiplayer, which actually was not supposed to be in the game. There was a talented programmer that, like, maybe a few weeks before the release of the game, or like a few months before the release of the game, he just went in on the weekend and he programmed a split screen just to see if he could do it, and to see if, and like, because he wanted to just see if they would like it. So he just like programmed it in there just because. He tested it out and it was fine, and he like showed it to them on Monday or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, this is really awesome! Yeah, let's do it." So that's how the multiplayer came in and made Twisted Metal 2 an even bigger hit, and became a staple of the game later on. But what you described just now of fully customizing your vehicle and everything, that was a game that was in development in 2008 and had been scrapped, and it was called Twisted Metal Apocalypse.
Yeah,
it was supposed to be for PS3. There was at San Diego Comic-Con International, Jaffe had released artwork for it. Which was just locations that were destroyed, like Rushmore, like Mount Rushmore was wrecked, or like a giant crater in the world, and they wanted, like, the team that he had at the time, or the studio at the time rather, called Eat Sleep Play. They wanted to. They were planning on making it, and Sony Computer Entertainment ended up rejecting it because what he had described it was a midnight club for Twisted Metal. So it was going to be like post-apocalyptic worlds, like a Mad Max type of world, like similar to Twisted Metal Black, but also you could fully customize your vehicles.
Yeah.
And you'd be able to do it, and it was going to be like a lot more of like an underground type of thing. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Apocalypse was a different game. Sony had erased that one because there was another game called another racing game that was similar called MotorStorm Apocalypse was also coming out. So they didn't want two of the same games. Twisted Metal Revolution is the one that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So that was also in development, and that was going to be more of like the street culture and the hip hop stuff, like similar to Midnight Club, and the characters were gonna have a much more realistic look, or like they looked more like just like criminals rather than like a maniac. It would look more or less like Sweet Tooth would probably look a little bit more like the Joker than he would look like he does in the other Twisted Metal games.
Yeah.
But you were also going to go. There was also going to be like Yakuza, federal, like FBI agents, like gang members and stuff, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, I mean, I think
we're very overdue for a new Twisted Metal game.
Yeah, and if Sony was smart, they would do something because, like again, battle royale games are like the big rage right now, and so they should really, and who knows, maybe there is something in development that they just haven't like talked about yet. But they should really get it out there soon before the battle royale genre kind of dies out, and becomes less big. I would definitely be down for playing another Twisted Metal game.
Yeah, just as long as they do it, because like the issue that a lot of people had with Twisted Metal 2012 was the lack of characters because you could only be 4.
Yeah,
it just revolved around the story arcs of Sweet Tooth, Preacher, Dollface, and Mr. Grimm, where in the other games you have upwards of like 15 characters.
Yeah.
But there actually is some stuff, some interesting things that have been in the works over the years. So like in 96, there was a Twisted Metal 2 one-shot comic book that was published by DC, which made a lot of sense, and it was kind of cool, but you could only get it as a prize in a contest in Tips and Tricks magazine, which is kind of neat. Like if anybody remembers the old days of when you have a comic book or a magazine or something, and there'd be like a fancy prize that you got to get like coupons for, or even like cereal box prizes where you'd have to get the box tops and like mail them in or whatever. You'd have to mail it in with like physical cash or a money order or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you'd get whatever it was, but that was the only way that you could get it. So that was kind of cool. I don't think I did that very much. I think maybe I only did that once or twice for something probably Pokemon related. But I can't really recall anything specific, but it was interesting because that was how you could end up getting it. Or like Marvel Comics had something called the Mile High Club, which was essentially a subscription service where it would send you whatever comic books you were going to get, and you'd get them like maybe a week or two before they were supposed to hit stores or something cool like that, and they'd send you, they'd send you some like fan club prizes and things. It was kind of neat. Anyway, so in 2012, Sony Pictures was also planning on bringing Twisted Metal to the movies. Like they were actually going to make a Twisted Metal movie, and they were going to get one of Brian Taylor, who was he was a co-director of Crank of the Crank movies with Jason Statham, the movie Gamer, and also the Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which it's a thing. It's a sequel to the Nick Cage movie. It's not good. I actually didn't even know that existed. I thought that they only did the one Ghost Rider movie, but they in fact did not. But this guy was going to write and direct the film, and in 2017 he told everybody that listen, Sony changed their mind. They didn't think that the fan base, they didn't think that there was enough of a fan base to get the to actually make the movie, because they felt that it was they had a certain budget in mind, and it turned out that in order to make that movie, it would have cost a bunch more, and they couldn't see any justification of getting an ROI on this thing if they were going to shell out the extra however many millions of dollars. They were is there really going to be enough people that are going to care about this where we'll actually make any money back on this, or is it going to be just or is it just going to be a cult following, and we'll get a few people, we'll get some people, and if we're lucky we'll break even. Is it actually worth it? Which personally, from the track record that video game movies have had, especially in 2012, or through 27, I would say there's maybe a handful of actual video game based movies that are any good.
Yeah.
So I think they made the right choice there.
Yeah.
Because I can't really see a Twisted Metal movie. What?
Yeah, I don't think
it would even be. Would that revolve around Sweet Tooth, or is everybody trying to or is it just essentially Death Race, where
it would probably be just like Death Race, pretty much.
I guess it'd have to be a Death Race Mad Max thing, and we just kind of they'd all be going after whatever they want. You'd get some development, but you wouldn't get everybody. I just don't think that it would work.
Yeah.
However, they are currently working on a TV show, which they had announced, and they had that's in development. And they had mentioned this in 2019 for during an investor presentation, a private one, and the Sony Pictures Entertainment chairman and CEO Tony Vinciquerra, I hope that I'm pronouncing that properly. His division is working with some people at the PlayStation division, a brand production team that they wanted to do. They wanted to take their gaming IPs and turn them into TV shows, or just film, or just projects in general. They want to do it. And last year they had mentioned that the series was still moving forward. They were going to they had Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who were helping develop the series with Michael Jonathan Smith, writing the series and executive producing alongside, this is an interesting cast of characters. Will Arnett, which he's kind of got his hands in everything now, it seems.
Yeah.
For the better. That Lego game show was kind of stupid, but he's Lego Batman, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And, who could forget him being Job on Arrested Development? So it's Will Arnett, Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, Mark Foreman, Peter Principato, Saad Elizabeth, Carter Swan, and Herman Holst. I don't really know a lot of those people, but those are the main people who are doing it. And also Anthony Mackie is he was reported to be John Doe. Anthony Mackie, of course, Hawk. He is he's the Falcon in the Marvel movies.
Oh yeah,
and in last month actually, they confirmed Anthony Mackie to be starring and also executive producing the series. And Peacock has actually ordered that series. So
oh no, the Cockmasters.
Yes, the Cockmasters themselves. So we will. So, assuming that everything goes according to plan, which in the world of Twisted Metal, it seems to be a crapshoot.
Yeah.
We are potentially going to be seeing a Twisted Metal series on Peacock. I don't know how I feel about it, but I am excited to see it. I think that it could do well as a TV show, as long as you flesh out each individual character, and maybe then you could do a movie. But I think as a show, it's not a bad concept.
Yeah, it could be good.
I think it could work. It just depends on how it's written, and it depends on, of course, like, what they do, and if they stay true to the source material. Hopefully they don't try to tie in any like political messaging into this, and I'm not really sure it could. But but then again, people tend to find a way if they want it bad enough, and it usually is not good.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that they stay away from this and they just leave it alone. They give it as much creative freedom to the executive producers as they want. Maybe they'll bring in David Jaffe as like a creative consultant for this. That would be really good if they decided to do that. But I don't know. But I think it'll be. I think it'll at least be worth checking out. So I would give it a 3-episode. I would give it a 3-episode trial, and hopefully it'll be good. But I don't know for certain. I think it'll be about 50-50 on whether or not this thing is watchable. But I hope that it's good, because it'd be nice to see it in this medium. And if they can do anything like they did in the Twisted Metal 2012 scenes, or if they can write it more like the Twisted Metal Black stuff, then I think it would be really good. And John Doe is a character only in Twisted Metal Black, and I think he's in Head On also. So that already tells me that they're at least drawing from that side of the source material, which is I think is the best way to go. But who knows? I could also see it. I could also see an animated series too, which might be
that could work.
I could see that working depending on
like a dark, gritty, animated kind of series, stylized. Yeah.
Like if the art style is similar to like Archer, I could see it working.
Yeah.
Or if it's in like more of an animated, if it's more like
I would say more like an anime, like a Gendy Tartakovsky kind of like project, maybe.
Yes, anything like that, I think would be really, really great. I could also possibly, if they didn't want to make it too mature, I could see them doing like a like the DC animated cartoon style, which I think would be pretty. I think would actually be okay for that too. I wouldn't be mad at that. But we'll have to see. Hopefully this does happen and we get to see something. And if we do, I hope it's good. But we definitely need to get a new game.
Yeah.
And I really hope that they do it, and I hope that it's really good. And I hope it builds I hope it expands more on the Twisted Metal Black universe.
Yeah.
Because that's, at least in my opinion, that's the most interesting.
Yeah.
And I think the fan support would probably agree with me there. But we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So there you have it. In a nutshell, that is the Twisted Metal series. I know we went a little bit all over the place. We tend to do that, but I hope that we put in as much information as possible. I'm sure there's a lot that we left out that David Jaffe has mentioned in a lot of his in a lot of interviews. But Twisted Metal, it's an iconic franchise. It's synonymous with the PlayStation, and it's just its own style of vehicular combat. There have been of course, other vehicular combat games. They haven't always been the greatest. Like WWE Crush Hour comes to mind as one of the worst ones, probably the worst ones. But another better one is like this is more or less like the multiplayer. Like I guess the multiplayer formats of Diddy Kong Racing are kind of similar in some ways. As like as like good. But there have been a lot of other fairly decent vehicular combat games too.
Probably the most popular, or the one that competed the most with Twisted Metal, was Vigilante 8.
Yes.
Which was a pretty fun game also, that maybe we could do an episode on later. It didn't go as far as Twisted Metal, as in, there was only 2 Vigilante 8 games, Vigilante 8 and then the sequel, The Second Offense. And then there was kind of like there was a game called Star Wars Demolition, which was based on the Vigilante 8 engine. They used the same engine, and it was all Star Wars characters. So, another similar vehicular combat game, but like that one wasn't nearly as well received as Vigilante 8 or Twisted Metal was. So that kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. So I mean, I think Twisted Metal really is like the predominant vehicular combat game that you'll find when anybody asks about a vehicle combat game with cars specifically. The first thing you're going to think of is Twisted Metal.
Yeah, it's well established, and I really can't wait to see what happens next with this franchise, game, TV show, both. I mean, I imagine that they'd either put out a game around the same time the show comes out, or at least shortly after.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe the goal is to have the TV show to sell the game, and then the game would expand on it, or you'd have the game to get people to watch the show. I don't really know, but I think it'll be interesting when to see what Sony's next move is with this franchise. And I'm excited. This is one of my favorite video game franchises ever. I love the world that they've built. I love everything that I loved how dark and gritty the environments have become over time. I still have a soft spot for 4 and its campiness, because that was the first game that was the first Twisted Metal game that I played. But I love the hell out of this franchise, and I really can't wait to see what the next game is.
Yeah.
And TV show, whatever they do. I just hope that it's done well, but I think if they get the right people involved, it'll of course be really good.
Yeah.
But that's our show. This has been another episode of Why Does This Exist? Thank you everybody for sticking around. Thank you for checking out the show. Thank you for doing everything needed. If you want to support us, feel free to head on over to Patreon and give us $1. You get access to the Discord server, and and you can just kind of talk to us, and we'll just we'll hang out. We'll be your buddies. And there's a bunch of other things. Support us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. And please go to our YouTube channel. Why Does This Exist? With a question mark. Like, comment, subscribe, give us feedback on our episodes, good, bad. Just it helps it helps us create a better show and better content.
Mm-hmm.
And we really appreciate each and every one of you. We wouldn't be doing this every single week without you. And we're 50 episodes strong. I can't think of a better episode. I can't think of a better topic that we've discussed. And a lot of this is a labor of love, and we really enjoy doing this. And we really appreciate each and every one of you. Please head over to whydoesthisexistpod.com and take a look at Tony's article about Ween. I think you're going to like it.
Yeah.
But that's the show. I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.